Okay, great to see everyone filtering in. The meeting room is getting filled up really fast. So this is like the virtual version of several people coming into the room just before the talk starts. So welcome all of you. So good to see you on day 3. Yeah, and we'll just get started very shortly because we don't want people to miss the any part of the webinars or and the workshop. So we'll just wait a bit as people get in. Yeah, I hope you can hear me. Somdatta, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's a relief. All right. Uh, yeah, I guess we'll get started in just a minute. So Pranav, we already have questions about the e-certificates. So maybe you can just put that in the chat window. Yeah.
Sure, I'll just do
Who they can email, and then we will send it to you. Give us a couple of weeks, please. We will send it to you as provided you've attended all 3 sessions. So yeah, we'll do that little check. And finally, the truth is we are not here for certificates. We're here to learn, and I hope that gets underscored. Yes. Good afternoon to everyone. Okay, it's a good time to 5. A good time to start getting started. Welcome to day 3 of this ultimate research communication workshop. There have been some interesting, thought-provoking sessions on manuscript writing, grant writing. They were quite intense. Somdatta and Madhurima, lots of takeaways. So we're so happy that India Bioscience and Taylor and Francis could partner to come up with this the design for this workshop. Workshops, of course, have an added advantage if they're done in person, but we still felt that it's a good place to start to see the kind of response and takeaways from the virtual workshop, which is at the end of the day much more accessible and also easy on logistics and organization. So we must say that we might come back with a revised version of this workshop early next year. Madhurima will share this again at the end of the session, and you can share this with your colleagues, and they can keep an eye out for it. We hope we can do that. Okay, so in the finale of this 3-part series, Somdatta, and you have been given we've given passed on the baton to you now to do this final run for us, and I'm sure it's going to be as successful and interactive and engaging as the previous 2 laps. So welcome, Somdatta. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this almost instantaneously. Great to have you on board. And I will say this, that the changing science communication landscape in India is very heartening. And also what is heartening is we have recognized science communicators in our fraternity. And Somdatta is one of them. So we're very happy that she agreed and happy that we could be this bridge between you all and Somdatta. So Somdatta is a PhD level scientist. Let that sink in a little bit. There are so many career paths post PhD and so many ways you can make a mark for yourself and enjoy the path and succeed at it. Currently, she is a communications officer at CSIR CCMB at Hyderabad. She's an ex-Teach for India fellow, and at CSIR CCMB, she leads science communication and public engagement, Somdatta. Of course, you
Correct.
also wear many hats, and we find you across diverse platforms. She also writes very regularly for India Bioscience, featuring recent interesting pieces of work. So welcome, Somdatta. I'll hand this over to you. The Q&A window and chat box are going to be very active. So we'll stop
Thank you
intermittently
very
for
much,
questions,
Karishma.
but you can take this forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karishma, for the kind introduction and also introducing me to this session today. Uh, Welcome everyone for the day 3 of this workshop. I'm probably a little sure that Zoom fatigue is setting in after attending 2 workshops back to back, and today is the 3rd one. But at the same time, I have also seen how actively you engaged in the last 2 workshops. So I'm hoping that I'm going to keep up that tempo from all of you. Let me quickly share my presentation, and while I do that, Pranav, if
Sure.
I may request you to share the poll. Uh, yeah. So if everybody can see a poll on the screen, I'll request you to fill that quickly in the next 30 seconds. I would, before we begin the session today, it will help me to understand who's our biggest audience today. So if you're a teacher, student, a scientist, anything that you think describes you, please put that in here. Please fill in the poll in the next 30 seconds.
Great. Somdatta, I don't think I see the poll because I'm a panelist. But could any attendee confirm that they can see the poll? Can anyone just put a thumbs up in the chat window if you see the poll? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really great to get that sort of
Excellent.
feedback.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so
70%
much.
have filled. Next 6 seconds more.
Wonderful.
Okay. Wow.
Please fill in as soon as
It's a
possible.
timed poll, Pranav. Okay, that's stressful. All right.
Right. I'm sharing the results of the poll.
Wonderful. So most of you are scientists. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I can close this. Okay. All right. So I'm Somdatta, and in the last 1 decade, I think I have worn different hats, each for a couple of years. From being a researcher, during my PhD, I was studying neuroscience. Then I went on to become an educator during my Teach for India fellowship days, and then I became a science communicator. So I have seen the science ecosystem from various different angles, from being a student in this space to now being an employee as a science communicator in the space. And I think today's conversation is going to touch across my understanding of this space in these different in the different roles that I have had. Primarily, the session is going to be on how to write a pop sci article, and by pop sci I mean popular science. Okay, I'm trying to change my screen, and that is somehow not happening.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we can figure it out. Now the screen is not being shared. Yeah. Okay, you started sharing again.
I just shared it again. Okay, excellent. So by pop sci or popular science communication, we mean simplifying science for non-experts. And what are these non-experts going to be? These non-experts can be anybody who's not pursuing that field of research. So if you look at it from the scientist angle, many of you will probably quickly talk about students, because we work with a lot of young students. We also want young people to take up science. So young students are a very active stakeholder that people keep in mind when we talk about pop sci. People also think about teachers, because again, because we want to reach out to young people, teachers become our agents of reaching out to young people. So a lot of pop sci also happens for teachers. At the same time, I'll also want you to understand that pop sci can happen for the funders. It can happen for taxpayers. Again, taxpayers are your funders. It can also happen for policymakers and everyone that you think around you deserves to know about science, and that's pretty much everyone. So I will also want you to think during this session today that we not only should be thinking about just student population, the teacher population when we think about pop sci, but the possibilities of people that we can reach out is much larger than that. And why do we want to reach out to these different people? We want to educate them, we want to inform them. At the same time, science also brings in the joy of discovery and that joy can actually be shared with others. And science can be entertaining, science can be joyful, and we want to also spread that through PopSci. We also want to engage different stakeholders to work with scientists to identify different problems, and then as a community where policymakers and scientists should come together, identify a problem and work towards it. So PopSci can also aim towards that. So from informing people, where by informing I mean that there is this power dynamics at play, that a scientist or a researcher has access to information that others do not have. So from being that at that angle to sharing the joy of discovery to identifying and solving problems together, popular science communication can actually play a role in all of these things. How do you reach out to these different people? Now, I will want you people to start writing in the chat box. What are the different formats of PopSci that you have come across? Just quickly write whatever comes to your mind. Newspaper articles, very good. Science magazines, blogs, TV programs, science tune, cool, street plays, excellent, radio commentaries, podcasts, radio stations, excellent. So pretty much all the kinds of mediums of receiving and disseminating information that we have, it could be visual, it could be audio, it could be touch-based. Any kind of information receiving medium can be pretty much used for also popular science communication. Now, this is something called as a public engagement onion, and I really like this infographic. So all these formats of information dissemination that you just came up with, like podcast, articles, radio shows. These are all mediums, and they can. These are just for disseminating information, and they form the outermost layer of this onion. And we use these different mediums for different kinds of objectives. Those objectives oftentimes start with education. We want to educate others. And like I mentioned, and as you keep going deeper into this onion, you are basically trying to move from the space of just sharing information, educating others, to involving them to come together and work together. And oftentimes, who do we want to work together? As a science researcher, as in my position at a science research institute, we want to work together with policymakers, for example. We want to work together with funders sometimes. For non-governmental organizations, oftentimes they want to work together with communities. So everybody, no matter where you are, if you have access to either scientific information or scientific tools or technological tools, this onion can probably work well for you. That your most primary attempts are generally around giving out information through any of these models. it could be simply a talk, you could be using social media, you could be building podcast, anything, or you could be writing, which is what we are going to discuss today. So you from there to moving on to what do you want to share this information with your target audience for. So that is the big core question that science communicators and public engagers in science often think about. So with this context set for you, now we will be delving into the topic of our discussion today, which is around PopSci writing. And on day one of this workshop, you went about paper writing, or what I'm going to call as scientific writing. So I want you to start writing in the chat box. How do you think PopSci is going to be different from scientific writing? So there are differences in who you're reaching out to and why you're reaching out to them. So in scientific writing, you're reaching out to experts in the field. So if you are a biologist, you're reaching out to other biologists. Sometimes it's most of the times it's even more niche than that. That if I'm a neuroscientist, I'm reaching out to another neuroscientist. So that's what technical writing or scientific writing or paper writing is generally about. And I want my peers in neuroscience, for example, to understand what I have done, and they should understand in a way that they should be able to take this work ahead, either in the same model system or in a different model system, but they need to understand how I have done that experiment so that they can try reproducing it. But in PopSci, I'm not trying to reach out to another scientist. In PopSci, I'm trying to, let's say, reach out to a student, or I'm trying to reach out to a policymaker. So how do you think that these two formats are going to be different, given that we are reaching out to different kinds of people and our reason to reach out to them is also different? So let me see your quick thoughts on this. Right, I see a lot of you have written already. Style of writing is different. No jargons. It's layperson taking out complexities, writing fixed formats for scientific writing. Popular science is more general. Writing similar to for dummies. PopSci is writing about research not done by us. That's not necessarily true, by the way, and I will also show you some examples of that today. PopSci means probably blog writing on any scientific topic, targeting general audience, layman's words to be used. Excellent. So I'm seeing a lot of layman, I'm seeing a lot of understandable, and I'm seeing a lot of simple language. And that's all correct. And at the same time, now that's probably also a good time for me to remind you that what is simple language? I mean, this definition or this term called simple language is not a very straightforward definition because, for example, now I'm reaching 40 years old, okay, and I talk to a lot of people in their 20s, and the English that they speak is very different from the English that I speak, and I think, I mean, what might be very easy language for them is an extremely complex language for me. And that I'm just telling you this because it should be, I mean, you need to pay a lot of attention to who exactly you're writing. I mean, oftentimes we just say, and we're kind of dismissive in saying that, okay, we're writing for layman, but then who exactly is this layman that you're talking about? Are these 20-year-olds? Are these urban 20-year-olds? Are these 40-year-olds? And are these 40-year-olds of tier 2 cities of India? What are the concerns of these people in the tier 2 cities of India, for example, if they are my target audience? So even in PopSci writing, there is no one homogeneous group of people called as people. You are still writing for niche readers. And the better you understand these niche readers, the better you will be able to reach out to them. And how do you select these niche readers? One of the easy ways, of course, is to start with the community that you yourself belong to. You might be belonging to a community because you are born in that community, or you have grown up in that community, or you are now studying or working in that community. Nevertheless, you need a certain connect with a community to be able to reach out to them effectively. So keep that in mind. Somehow, interestingly, every time I open a chat box, my screen kind of freezes. I'm sorry about this. Now we'll get into who writes PopSci articles and why do they write. So there are science journalists who write. There are science writers, science communicators like me. science enthusiasts as well, who might be just pursuing or who might just be following the developments in science as a hobby as well. And then there are practicing scientists or retired scientists often who write. And there are teachers and students of science who also write. And all of these people write about science for their different reasons. A journalist might look at it very differently from a science communicator, and a science communicator might look at it very differently from a scientist or a student. So it's important to keep that in mind, because then they are also looking at any story from their own lens, from their own interest point of view. In our conversation today, given that our poll said that most of you are researchers, we are going to focus on how scientists and students and teachers of science go about writing pop sci. So what are the different platforms for popular science writing? So now major science journal websites cover popular science. There are also independent websites for popular science communication. There are research institutes might also be running such websites or magazines. Newspapers cover them. Wikipedia is also a website that I'm going to put in this category, because I think that they also contribute a lot in public understanding of science and people of science. So all of these are going to look very different. I'm pretty sure that I don't need to mention to this group of people that a Wikipedia article, for example, is going to look very different from, let's say, what popular science article you might find on any of these nature SciComm section, for example. So there are going to today the platforms for popular science is just increasing, and there also, I mean, in addition to these, for example, some of the science-based or tech-based companies are also coming up with platforms for pop sci, because they want people to understand the tech better so that there's better uptake of their technology. So popular science writing is definitely spreading across spectrum, from research institutes to education to just bettering the uptake of technologies. So I mean, if you have to write a pop sci article, then you need to understand the different parts of an article. And like a technical writing piece, I remember Punya Shlok had told you that you need to talk about what you are doing, you talk about how you have gone about doing it, what are the implications of this study. A pop sci article in that sense will also have the same points that you need to cover, but in different sequence and in different priorities. In a pop sci article, your reader is interested in the what and why as the most important parts, and how comes in after that. However, I've also seen a shift in pop sci writing in the last few years. I mean, for example, I got into pop sci about 6 to 7 years back, and at that point, the what and the why took all the stage of pop sci writing or pop sci communication. The how part of it is now also gaining a lot of importance. However, the sequence or the priority sequence definitely remains at what and why first, and then comes the how. I will now be showing you some of the examples of pop sci articles written by scientists. And these are different, I mean, two of these have only Indian writers. The third one is a co-written article between an Indian scientist and UK scientist. What I want you to see in these articles is how they have been written. I want you to actually be critiquing each one of these articles. I will be sharing one link at a time in the chat box, and I will want you to go through it. I'll give you 3 minutes to go through each article, and then you will start writing in the chat box 2 things that you liked about the article and 2 things that the article could have done better. So with that, I'll share the link of the first article now in the chat box. This article, I hope you're all able to open the link on your own devices. If you want me to share the screen here, you should let me know. I can also do that for you.
Thanks, Somdatta. It's opening for me.
Excellent. So I'll give you 3 minutes. It's 2:28 on my computer's watch, and when it's 2:31 here, I'll come back and want to know your thoughts. So this article that I have shared is written by Professor Gadakar from the Indian Institute of Science, and at that point he was writing a series for the Wire Science, and he covers basically the excitements of discoveries in his own work and also reviews the field. And yeah, so I'll zip now and want to hear more from others.
Certainly. Somdatta, maybe after they come back, we can unmute a few.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. There's such interesting questions coming up already, and I'm so tempted to address them, but I probably should wait because it'll break the flow of the thoughts for others.
Exactly, exactly. No worries. When they're sharing their thoughts, we can then maybe take some questions.
Yes, yes. All right, so it's 2:31 on my watch here, and I see Shivangini has already shared her thoughts. I would also love to hear from others, and Karishma, if you think you want to unmute anyone, I'll also love to hear them in voice.
Sure. So, Shivangini has shared her thoughts. That's true. The storytelling part. Satyam Kumar Agarwal. This Sanjeet, Kalpana, Usha, Fziba, Swati, would you like to be unmute? Your hands are up, so I'm just wondering. Angelina says, too lengthy. Somdatta. Chanchal says, personal touch. Okay. Sanjeet, I'll unmute. Would you like to unmute? I don't know if they can in the setting, but Sanjeet, maybe in that case, would you like to share your thoughts in the webinar chat window? I'm not sure if the setting allows unmute in webinar.
If somebody wants to unmute them, they can write on the chat box and Pranav will just help unmute them. They can just share their thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, right. Sanjeet has been talking permitted through the webinar. Okay, Sanjeet, please do share your thoughts. Sanjeet, can you unmute and share your thoughts?
In the meantime, I'm also keeping an eye on the chat box, and I am seeing that everybody is impressed with the storytelling like this. I mean, of course, many of you have mentioned that it's a very lengthy piece, and I completely agree with it. I think it's a terribly lengthy piece even for my age. But at the same time, there's this beautiful storytelling that's also running, which keeps you engaged. So the reason I picked this article is because I wanted to hear from you, what is this balance between the length of a story and the engaging nature of the story? I mean, do you think that the engagement of the story, if it's good enough, it'll keep you going even for a length which is like of this article? And I should also be telling you that unfortunately or fortunately, in this business, the writer only cares about their readers. And if I'm not their reader, they will not care about my opinion. So, and that's also the importance of knowing who you are writing for. So in popular science communication, they will not care about everyone's thoughts. But that in that sense, it's also true for technical writing. They care about who they're writing for. And if they're writing for their peers, that's what they want to reach out to more effectively. Yeah. I'm also seeing a lot of you talking about fancy words, and I also agree to that, that some of those words, I think, I mean, even though this is an article that's published in a newspaper, uh, I think the reason it's published in a newspaper are these. One, it's written by a very accomplished scientist. The second is the scientist also has a very gripping storytelling format, which I think all of you or most of you have also acknowledged in your comments. But at the same time, the purpose of writing this story is to inspire other people to work on similar topics. So in that sense, it kind of takes into account, or it kind of takes for granted, that the reader of this story is also somebody who is going to be interested or aware of genetics to some degree, or of insect behavior to some degree. And I think that's where that disconnect also starts coming in for a person who might not be so aware of these areas. I will now share the second article for you all in the chat box. And the second article is written by a student, a PhD student, also talking about a field. So go through that. It's 2:36 on my computer. When it's 2:39, I'll come back and want to hear your thoughts on what you think about the second article. So remember, I want to hear from you both what has worked well in the article and what can be done better. The second article that I have shared is from India Bioscience. And that's also to tell you that India Bioscience is a great forum to do popular science communication, especially if you are trying to reach out to young people with educational content to inspire them to do science. Cool. I'm already seeing a lot of comments coming in the chat box, and clearly, first point is you finished reading this much quickly, much earlier than the other article. So many of you are talking about it's an easy read. I mean, you can run through it quickly. It's interesting topic. At the same time, some of you have also mentioned that it's superficial. So that's the risk that we also run. I mean, that's exactly the challenge between getting into depth and hence becoming too lengthy versus keeping it short, but then running the risk of the readers not finding enough depth in that article. And again, like I mentioned a little while earlier, there's no right or wrong way about go about this. It literally depends on which forum you're writing for, what kind of article they are looking for, what kind of purpose you are writing this article for. If, for example, this article is just to tell that, okay, extracellular vesicles are a cool thing out there that molecular biologists or cell biologists are really keeping an eye on these days, I think this article does a great job of that. So somebody also said that this article is more about her own experience than about the EVs themselves, which is also very correct. And that's the style that probably the author or the editor of this article wanted to have. So sometimes the forum that you're writing for will also have a say on how they want to format a certain story. So I don't know how India Bioscience went about really this particular story, but I can tell you that sometimes the focus of a publication forum might be also on telling a scientist's story through the science that they're doing. And so different people might have different aims and interest when they are commissioning a certain article, or even when the writer themselves are writing that article. So that will come across. Simple, informative for common man, however, too general for a researcher. Very correct. So it could totally be possible that this article was written for, let's say, people in their undergrad and who have, and the article is also framed in a way that the extracellular vesicles are yet not as commonplace a term when people describe the organelles in a cell. So clearly, I mean, that's not for somebody who's already doing a PhD in extracellular vesicles, but rather somebody who has just learned about cells and has not yet come across this term. Excellent. Now I'll go to the third.
So while Somdatta adds the link to the third article, I will request the participants, you have such great points here, which you're putting on the chat box, which some of you can be unmuted. So if you want to, speak out, just type in on that chat box. We'll unmute you and would love to hear you and maybe, share some thoughts, and that'll probably be exciting for everyone else. So just type in if some of you want to be unmuted, or like we can switch on your camera or something.
Absolutely. And the third article that I'm going to post now is going to be a little different in the sense that the first two articles were overviews of a field. I mean, one was a very lengthy, in-depth overview. The other was a very short, crisp overview. This third article is about one of the discoveries that these two scientists made, and they themselves are talking about it. So somebody who had written earlier that PopSci is not written by the scientists themselves, that's not necessarily true. It can be written by the scientists themselves. It can be also written by others. So this is an example of a writing by the scientist about their own work. So same thing, I'll give you 3 minutes, and it's 2:43. By 2:46, I'll want to come back and see your comments on what is good about this article and what can be done better. I really like the comments that you're putting, very, very on the point. I really like this comment actually, which says that I'm unable to understand why I should be interested in frogs. Apart from that, it was readable and easy to understand. Gauri also says that the article is for a specific audience from ecological sciences, I believe. The author is more concerned about conservation of a certain species. It'll catch eye only if somebody is really interested in zoology. So I'm basically, I mean, as you might have noticed, I'm reading the ones, reading the comments which are more around how to improve that article. And of course, like many of you have pointed out the good parts of the article, which is it talks about many technical things, but I think it does that very, very lucidly. It is easy to understand what they're trying to talk about. It has a persuasive tone, yes. And I think they're really trying to persuade the industry, the animal diagnostics industry, to take note of this pandemic that's going around in amphibians and to come up with diagnostic tests, given that their discovery is also aimed towards improving that. And I will also want you to now think a little bit around the kind of how they selected where they want to publish an article like this. So given that it's a pandemic, so which means that the problem is across the world, I think they went about writing it for a forum like The Conversation, which has much more international reach, because they want people from different parts of the globe to take note of the problem and also be inspired to work towards its solution. Cool. Now that you have gone through these 3 articles, I want you to start thinking around how are the 3 articles distinctly different from each other. So how have, I mean, and if you, I mean, of course, on one hand, there is this very seasoned researcher who is reflecting on the amount of work that he has done across his career, trying to inspire people. Then you have a young person who is trying to tell people about this rather new field of biology that many people might not yet even know about. And the third is there's a specific problem, there's a specific solution that people have developed, and they want to tell the world about it. So there are three distinct aspects. Now, if you have to be a science communicator and if you have to write a pop sci article, which of these categories will you fall under, and how will you go about writing your article? Just like if you have to quickly think, where do you fall in the spectrum? And what kind of article would you like to write? What would that be? Quick thoughts. And this is for you to just mull over the different styles that you have seen today. Cool. So I am seeing a lot of second and third article categories, and few, but there are people who also fall in the first kind of category. So some would like a combination of all three. Excellent, excellent. So the reason I wanted you to do this introspection is because all these platforms, and in India, I mean, I'm in like so many of these conversations now where people want scientists to write more about their work, to speak more about their work. So depending on which category you think you fit in better, I think you should start talking to them more actively and seeing how you can write for them. All right, let me go back to my presentation now. All right, so I'm struggling to make it full screen, but nevertheless, so if you are writing, then keep in mind that you can be writing about your own research, or you can also be writing about others' research. But in either of the two cases, it is imperative that you first think about who is your reader going to be. When you are writing about any of the kind of science, scientific research, it can be about a new discovery, or it can also be about unresolved questions of the field or the history of the field. So you can be talking about the past, the history of a field. You can be talking about the present discoveries of the field. You can also be talking about the future that the field is moving towards. It is helpful if you follow scientists and research institutes to know new developments, particularly when you're trying to write about others' work. You can write it on your own blog space or on your own institution's magazine or blog space or website or other publication forums. And I've tried showing you some of the examples today in this conversation. Remember that depending on the publication forum, your style of writing will be determined by them. So they will dictate what will be your word count, for example, or they will also tell you how they would, I mean, would they like a more conversational tone, or would they like a more technical, a more science in-depth kind of story? So those are things that you need to keep in mind with your publication forum. And always, always, always contextualize the article for your reader. The hooks of your article, the connecting points, the analogies that you use in the article, those need to make sense to your reader. It is useless if you're using an analogy that itself is unknown to your reader, because then you will end up first explaining the analogy and then, and then try to fit in with the signs that you're describing. That does not work. So in short, you need to know the reader as closely as possible for you to be writing well for them. So some of the common rookie mistakes that I see people doing, scientists doing when they're writing writing about science for public, is that they write it for themselves, not really for the readers. So what I mean is that a scientist might be really excited about a certain protein, and they are trying all different kinds of ways to study that protein. But for the reader, for most of the categories of reader, that will be just one protein out of a million proteins. So simply because you are really excited about that one protein, it does not mean that the reader that you're trying to reach out to will be excited about just that protein. They probably are trying to look at that from a much bigger scale. I'll give you an example. We have researchers who work on parasites, for example, and many of these researchers, they're generally looking at one class of protein, and these are complex questions. These are complex questions to understand. But as soon as you look at the public that want to understand, let's say malaria, they want to understand it from the disease point of view. They want to understand what is causing malaria, how can we prevent malaria, how can we eradicate malaria. And there are 100 scientists who are looking at 100 different proteins that are probably playing a role in malaria. A general reader is interested in getting that overview, not just in one protein, unless that one protein is going to be really, really crucial. For example, in case of COVID-19, the spike protein, for example, got that kind of limelight, that it was that one key protein that everybody was interested in. So only in those cases, people will be interested in such key narrow details. In most of the cases, they'll be interested in a much more kind of understand. Now, what I want to give an example here, for example, is of wanting to reach out to policymakers about the discoveries that they have made. Policymakers to take notice of it and also implement it. Not interacted with policymakers earlier, you will not understand what are the constraints that policymakers work with. And it's very easy to think that we found this cool thing, but they just don't want to adopt it. So if you're writing for a demography, like I mentioned earlier, you need to understand that. It will really feel like paying attention. Oftentimes, again, I think it's a continuity of the rookie mistake number one, that people start writing without thinking that that piece is going to be published. And after the piece is written, then they start looking for publication forum, and it is messy if you, because then the publication forum value in it, a lot of part of it, and it just both. And the last thing is too much, which is that often I've gotten this chance now, and I'm going to write everything that I know about, and this is going to be like this one single biblical article that I'm going to write, and is going to change the face of the world. So one, that does not happen. Two is that science communication is a very continual business. So it is a fallacy if you think that you are going to write this one article and that's the end of it. Instead, you identify topics, you tie in those topics with each other that are digestible, like you all mentioned that there is a certain limit after which it starts looking very lengthy. So depending on who you are writing for, you need to know where is that limit for them and keep it constrained within that length. Keep the, I mean, each article I always recommend should have one key central question that is being addressed in it. And then if you have like 10 such questions to be addressed, write 10 different articles. Nobody is generally going to stop you. You will have that possibility. So do it as a series of articles rather than making it one huge biblical article. So based on these mistakes, I always suggest this essential checklist. Think of who is your intended reader. How are you going to reach to this reader? Which publication forum will help you reach there? What novel information are you going to give your reader? By novel, and why will you want your reader, why will your reader want to read the article? So generally readers will look for an article or for a piece of information for two reasons. One, either it is novel. Second, it is timely. It is probably not novel, but let's say it's rainy season and there's malaria happening everywhere, and people are suddenly again reminded, like, yeah, there's this problem of malaria. We still haven't figured out how to go about it. People will want to read about it. And the last thing is your writing understandable to your readers? So that includes both the choice of words. There are now websites also or apps these days where you can upload your writing and it will kind of highlight the areas or the words that it thinks are too technical, too jargon heavy, and it will recommend you where to start changing it. Of course, we're living in the world of ChatGPT, so that will also help you. So, but nevertheless, remember that these apps might not still be made for the reader, for the community that you want to reach out. Hi, I had just lost the connection. I hope I'm audible to people.
Yes, Somdatta, you are.
Give me a time. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just mentioning that pay attention to the choice, to the way your article has been drafted, even simple things like the vocabulary that you have used. And there are apps these days that might be helpful, but not necessarily always. And now the last activity that I want you to do is to think like an editor. So I'm going to share one of the articles that one of our students at CCMB had written for our popular science website, which is called Citates by CCMB. And at Citates at CCMB, we try to reach out to young people. We want to inspire young people about the questions that can be solved using scientific tools, and such that they go on to also pursue science and be excited about solving such questions. So I'm going to share this article here, and I will want you to think about what can be done better in that article. Can you all see the article in the chat box? And if you can see, start working on it as an editor. go ruthless. I mean, make track changes and shape it. I mean, think of you yourself. I mean, many of you are students also. So be critical in thinking if this article helps you become inspired to work on a problem like this. The article, of course, is about dengue and Aedes, like the relationship between dengue virus and the Aedes mosquito. It's not a link. I have shared the Word document. Do you see the Word document? I'm going to post it again. I've just posted it twice again. You should be able to click on it and download on your system. Yeah, I'm sorry some of you are not able to see it. Maybe I can also email it to you all later on. But people who can or who have downloaded it, you can start editing it. And people who are not able to do that, I'm going to share the I will try to put that on a Google Drive and send it to you. I've shared the Google Doc here now. I believe you should be able to access that. Excellent. So take like, I mean, it's 3:08 on my system, and given that you are editing, you will take a little longer. So take about 5 minutes and then we come back. So around 3:13 or so, we start our discussion again. Remember, I want you to be editing it also. So if you think that it should be categorized under subheadings, do that in that document. Or so people who are accessing the Google Doc, I will recommend you downloading it. I see that a lot of you are talking about it having too many ideas, and many of you think that subheadings can help, and I agree that subheadings can help. But also remember that subheading is not the only way to go about it. So oftentimes, if you write it with subheadings, remember the criteria to my courses article, it might also seem like, okay, you're jumping from one topic to another topic to another topic. Of course, the subheadings at least give you a gist of what topic you're getting in. But as I think that sometimes can also affect the readability of the article. So for connecting one part to another, it becomes better when you start connecting the topic from one to another. So for example, if the article starts with monsoon, then I mean, what does monsoon have got to do with dengue? And then from dengue, we have to get to the dengue virus, and then from dengue virus to dengue virus's evolution. I'll give you 2 more minutes. Pranav, can they share the document from their end?
I need to check if everybody has option to share their attachments.
So Bertha, I will want to push you to telling what is that some more work that you think is needed. Or if you're writing that the article could be improved, we are looking to know from you what exactly you think can be improved or should be improved. I'm also seeing on the Google Drive, where many of you are putting in your thoughts and suggestions. You're looking at the grammar of the article at the moment. I will really recommend that this is, I mean, when you are editing for the first time, you're not, I mean, you need not pay attention to the grammar right now. You look at what is missing in the article, like is the flow of the article good enough? Does the article require more information? I mean, if the author is talking about, I mean, the title, I think, talks about it, that the author wants to talk about the dengue virus and Aedes mosquito and their relationship. Does the article give you enough material to understand that relationship? If not, then you should be marking those points. That's what your first round of editing should be like. Grammar is really the last thing. Visuals could have helped, yes. But given that our discussion today is around writing, we'll focus on that. But yes, overall, as a science communicator, I definitely think that any article gains a lot by using more visuals or more multisensory additions. All right. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. Now I will share the link of the edited version from our end at CCMB to reach, I mean, and this of course is shaped by our understanding of what our readers enjoy reading. I will want you to now read the edited version of the article and tell me if you see differences, if you think the edited version does take into account some of the shortcomings that you saw earlier, and how did it make those changes. So Animesh's question is that it does not, I mean, it mentions about the relationship between the virus and the mosquito, but does not give information on solutions. That is true. And remember that I mentioned that one article need not give everything. If the article's theme is to talk about that relationship, the emphasis will be on that. So I've now shared the link of the edited version that we published on our website. I'll want you to go through that and see if some of the shortcomings that you had identified earlier have those been addressed here. Kalpana, I think you cannot share the edited article with me, but then anyway, I wanted you to do that as an exercise for yourself to start thinking like an editor in this activity. So when you're now going through the published article, I want you to reflect on the shortcomings that you had identified at first and now look for it. I mean, do you think that the shortcoming has still remained? If it has remained, then, I mean, as an editor, we have not been able to do it sufficiently well for you as a reader, which is fine, I mean, which can happen. What I want you to see is if you can find some of the shortcomings that have been addressed and how they have been addressed in the edited version. So in a minute, I'll want to see your responses on that. Thank you very much, all of you who have started sharing your thoughts. Pranav, I think now I'd like to hear thoughts from them in person, if you can unmute them. So if anyone wants to share your thoughts on the differences in the two articles, in the first draft and the edited version, I'll really like to hear that from you.
Could you guys please raise your hands if anybody wants to talk?
So in the meantime, I'll pick this question from Manikandan on why is the article not talking about the losses in terms of dengue, for example? And as an editor, I felt that the article is more about understanding evolution, not the consequences or the aftermath of dengue. But that's simply because I wanted the article to emphasize more on the complexities of evolution as a process or co-evolution as a process. But a certain other publication forum might want to focus on the uh, deadliness of dengue and hence the importance of understanding dengue as a disease or dengue virus as the causation of that disease. And they definitely will want to keep that number in the article. So it literally depends on what is the focus of that article or the publication forum. What kind of emotion are they trying to achieve through that? So for me, it was more about bringing out this beauty of co-evolution. And I didn't want a lot of emphasis to go on the loss that happens, which is undeniable. Of course, that happens. But that was not the angle that I was looking at. So I'm happy to see a lot of you saw the change in the introduction where the author wanted to bring out the rainy season part of it. And that is what actually made the article timely, that there were a lot of dengue cases happening in Hyderabad at that point when this article was published. But at the same time, I don't think that the article needed like a huge description of what monsoon feels like, because again, that's not the focus. And so long as people understand that, okay, it's when dengue cases are on rise, and do we understand really dengue? That was all the hope that we wanted. All right. So Arvind is asking if there's a word limit for popular science articles. So the word limit is literally decided by the publication forum, or if it is your own blog piece, you will have to decide what does your reader, what kind of readers or followers you have. Do your followers like to read just pocket-sized information? It could be just like there are websites which are literally called bite size. There's one at least which is called Bite Size Science, I think, or Bite Science. So, there are forums which publish articles with just 200 words, and then there are forums with 2000 words. Many of the ones that I write are generally around 1000 words, or I make our students write is about 1000 words. So there is no one rule. It literally depends on which forum you're writing for. Why most journals are canceling nowadays, stating scope issue. Though I'm not a journal specialist, and Madhurima will probably be a better person to answer this, but the overall problem remains the same, that their readers need a certain kind of information. Are you providing that information to them? So if a particular journal is focused on, let's say, diseases and solving that disease, they will not care about co-evolution. They will care about, are you making a diagnostic? Are you making a particular tool? Kalpana has asked an interesting question. Do we give references in SciPop articles? There's no one standard for it, but increasingly people are beginning to do that. Madhurima or Karishma, do you want me to touch on anything else? In the meantime, I will also just give my closing remarks on this topic. So now that you have gotten a flavor of writing and editing, and there's this constant discussion around me that now that tools like ChatGPT are out there, I mean, what's the relevance of a human writer? And I think it's a very pertinent discussion to have. What I have understood myself uh, is that tools like ChatGPT, I mean, they're doing well for straightforward articles. So, for example, I was just having this conversation last weekend with somebody who works at a publication industry, and they have a pop sci department as well. So now they have papers of all kinds that they want to convert into popular science articles, and they have human journalists who do that, of course. But lately, they've started developing in-house AI tools that can go through that paper, summarize it. And what they see is that at this moment, the tools are good enough for straightforward articles where they say, I mean, but there's not too much of numerical analysis. Let me put it plainly as this. If the analytics are difficult, then AI is not yet able to do that, and humans are much better off doing it. So that's the state of the art with respect to writing. That when we want complex results to be analyzed or meaningful inferences to be made, contextualized inferences to be made, humans are doing a better job of it. And if you, I mean, because I'm a science communicator, I think I want to make this pitch that most of you are scientists or students, and if you are engaging in pop sci writing, I can tell you that it helps you look at the bigger picture of the area that you're working on. You will really zoom out from that one single protein or one class of cells or one class of molecules that you're looking at to the big question on why is society interested in a certain problem. And when I'm saying a problem, it need not be just diseases to cure. I mean, society really out there also appreciates a lot of discovery. I mean, if you start talking to people, you'll see how people also want to understand how nature around them works. But it's just that they don't want to care about just one little tiny protein or one little tiny cells. Most of them are looking to understand this big puzzle that they are all part of, which is called nature. And people do appreciate its better understanding. And pop sci really helps you get that view as well. If you are writing popular science, it will also give you enough content for you to be putting it on social media as well. I mean, it could be Twitter, where I can tell you it's a great forum for scientist to scientist interaction, as well as a lot of journalists keep an eye on the content that scientists put out on Twitter. So if you want your science or your scientific work to get more eyes, do get on social media, and your popular science writing overall will help you get that, get content for that. And at the same time, I mean, this hopefully will also inspire you to do science communication. Some of you might want to consider become a science communicator as a career choice, take it up as a career choice like I did, or you can also complement it with your own research or teaching career going forward. With that, I will end my workshop today, and I'll be very, very happy to stay in touch with all of you. You can write to me, you can reach out to me on Twitter, and I will really love if you can go through our SciTales website, because that is something I'm really trying to promote and hear from young people to know how can a popular science website from a research institute be improved upon? So I'm all ears to all kinds of suggestions that you have. With that, I am done with my presentation and happy to take any kind of question.
Thank you, Somdatta. I think that was a very interesting talk, and I can see that the audience is really engaged. I think a lot you have motivated a lot of students and researchers to get into science engagement, talk more about their research to a wider audience. So maybe communicating academic writing is a part of their curriculum, so ingrained that they feel the need to do it, and sometimes miss out on the outreach part, which is equally important to reach out to a wider audience. So there are a lot of questions, I think, which are coming through. So maybe I'll put across a few more to you.
Sure.
Let me see. A lot of questions. I'm sorry if I miss out on some questions, but I'm sure Somdatta would be available later also for you to ping to her directly and ask her about these questions. So, so there is Dr. Rohit Kumar who is asking if is there a typical format for PopSci article, like known to unknown, problem, solution, benefit? Is there something that you would particularly suggest to somebody who is venturing out?
Sure. And I hope that the 3 or 4 examples that you saw today must have given you an idea that there is no one definition of going about it. In that sense, it's a little bit different from the technical writing. I mean, I know that different journals, even for technical writing, have different sequence, but I think there's this common part of at least, okay, there's an introduction, then there will be result, then there will be discussion. Popular science writing really does not follow it as strictly as a paper writing, but nevertheless, it will also have a hook, which is an analog of introduction. Why should I care about reading this article? So I think that's an important part in a popular science article. And then what new is out there, or what is, so, I mean, why are we talking about this? What is the timeliness of this question? And then the why, I mean, which is the why of it also. And then the how part. So the how is really generally the, in many times it's probably, if it's a short piece, many people you will see has just skipped the how, which means that the how is also kept for more deeper engagements, more detailed readerships.
Great. Thank you, Somdatta. I think that's really helpful. So Chetna Baliga, she asks if you want to summarize or cover some specific scientific paper in another smaller journal, like Resonance or Current Science, can you reproduce images from it? Do you need to take permission from the author or the journal? So
Yeah.
I think
So. I think this question also came up yesterday. Anytime you're using something that is owned by somebody else, you'll need a permission. And most of the times, the journals have copyright ownership on these things, so which means that you will need permissions for these. But Madhurima, you can elaborate on this.
Absolutely. So most of our journal articles would be copyrighted to an owner of the article. It could be the author. If it's an open access article, it could be a society that owns the journal. It could be a publisher that has that owns the journal or has a contract with a certain society. So for you to be reproducing any image or using them as such in your article, you have to take permission. So just go via the route, just go to the original paper and see their guidelines on how to reuse the image, or if at all you can. So another question which is not on copyrights, but yeah, plagiarism, that how important, and maybe I'll add a part to this question. So it is how important is plagiarism, like how is plagiarism an important part of writing? And we see a lot of articles, popular science article, people tend to do it would probably be one author who would have done all the hard work of actually referring back to scientific articles and then writing a paper, referencing to that, and then there'll be 10 articles based on the first news article that was there.
Absolutely.
So where does how does
yeah.
one draw a line?
Yeah. And unlike in academic publications, there is no set guideline per se on this. Now there's a good and a bad part of it. So many a times, I mean, for example, for the kind of articles that we put up on SciTales, we keep it, I mean, for us, if somebody is inspired by that article and goes on to adapt it, that's the perfect case scenario. That's a huge success then, that we have been able to inspire other storytellers to also talk about similar stories. In bad case scenarios, they will use the article as is. However, that has not happened to us in SciTales, at least not to our notice. But that's the thing, that the internet is such a huge world out there. I mean, we cannot keep an eye on who's plagiarizing it or not. I mean, if they're using it as is or not. But at the same time, given that our focus is actually our primary focus is dissemination of that knowledge, we will probably not care about it as much. However, I know of examples where freelance science communicators, they have gotten plagiarized. And now these are even more complex. For example, there is somebody who makes visuals, and every writer or every visual artist, they have their own styles, and their styles get copied. And it's very difficult to then start saying that, okay, hey, this is my style and you are not supposed to copy this. So it's more like an ethical, moral responsibility than, let's say, looking at a lawsuit kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, it's terribly gray. And I think the community is not yet at a position where they start having more discussions on this, but it will start happening probably. Because oftentimes, it starts mattering when it's a very money-driven field. At this moment, it's not a very money-driven field at this moment.
Great. Thanks, Somdatta. So there are a couple of questions, I think, from researchers whom you would have motivated today to start writing PopSci articles, who are asking, how do you start? Like, how do you find a suitable venue where you would want to write to, or like, just like, how did you go about writing, say, your first article? What's the starting point there?
Correct. So there are two things. One is, it's easier to start writing for your local communities. India Bioscience literally was that community for me, because we had similar demography that we both wanted to reach out to. So that helped. But at the same time, in my position where I have to also enable a lot of other young people around me to finding such possibilities, that is when we started the SciTales by CCMB website, because we saw that, I mean, like I mentioned like a million times in my conversation today, that every publication, website, or forum will have their own agenda, their own interest at the fore. And we felt that at that point, at least, and this is like about 3 years back, we felt that nobody was paying attention to what the scientists themselves want to say. Like, there are just so many limitations on ki acha nahi, your hook is not working for us, or this is not working, or this is too technical, or this is too much information. And then we just decided that as an institute, we'll have this one space for our own scientists to put out their thoughts. This is their place to experiment with their thoughts, with their ideas. So what I'm on, maybe the reason I'm saying this in such detail is because if your own institute can put out a website, I think that's great, because in India at the moment, most of I know that we have some of our joinees today from outside India, but I'm sorry that I'm using examples only from India, but that's where my expertise really is. In most of our institutes, we now do a lot of outreach, and our outreach programs often just look like students will come, they'll listen to a talk or probably go around the institute and then they leave. But there is, but we can, in short, we can actually be reaching out to all these people who are coming to our institutes if we can have a website which is dedicated for them. And that is the culture that I'm trying to build, that our outreach programs go beyond just this one-time visit, a picnic-like thing in our own institutes. To you come, you get to know us, but you also get to know that, okay, you can keep in touch with us through a website. And website is just an example. Tomorrow, a website might evolve into something else. But we need to have these continuum of conversations or engagement, at least, with people. And I definitely think that our science institutes need to, each one of them need to have a popular science website kind of a thing.
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of students and researchers who are interested, and I think there's a growing awareness nowadays about outreach and scientific. Not so much, maybe, when I was doing my PhD 10 years back, I think people are a lot more aware and interested, and there are more avenues. And maybe also with the advent of open access publication, a lot of literature which was otherwise, behind a paywall or something is available, so people are able to refer to them or maybe convert them into blog or news pieces.
Absolutely.
So there is someone who's asking, do you take online courses if they want to send you a student?
So I don't know how to answer that. Of course, I mean, I am doing a workshop with you all right now, so I do participate in these kinds. But at the same time, if you are looking for a more deeper course, there are other agencies which do that, where there will be either me or other experts like me who will be on board and taking that. So SciRio, for example, is one agency that has been quite at the forefront of doing these online SciComm courses. And if any one of you are interested, you should be reaching out to them.
It's that I think you have generated a lot of fan following for yourself today, and also motivated students to take up scientific outreach, SciComm, and popular science writing as something that they should think about when they're going. At this point, I would want to check with Karishma if she would like to come online and maybe talk a bit about science outreach, because India Bioscience does that a lot. And as you mentioned, Somdatta, in your talk, that you also, for you, I think the initial point where you started was India Bioscience. So it would be great to hear from Karishma or any of the other India Bioscience representatives that are there. Post which I think we can go for the concluding remarks. So thank you so much, Somdatta. Incredible discussion on popular science, SciComm, and as you can see, people are already asking you whether you want to talk to them more about this. And I'm sure a lot of institutes and administrator must also think about or take scientific outreach more seriously, because that is something which is very much needed to amplify the research that you've done, the research that has taken place in a certain region, for a wider reach and impact of it. So over to Karishma for to talk about bioscience.
Hi, Karishma. Hello. Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, hi. Sorry, there's some network issue here. This is Rohini Karandekar. I am the Associate Director with India Bioscience. And thank you, Somdatta, for the insightful talk. With respect to, representing India Bioscience, I would like to respond on behalf of Karishma. So with respect to the question on the outreach, I would request viewers to please take a look at our India Bioscience outreach grants. We give these grants every year for around five entrants, and there are articles also written on what kind of outreach different people are doing. In addition, recently there is a compendium launched called Dhwani, and in Dhwani is a compilation of a lot of outreach activities that take place in India. For some reason, I am not able to access the chat window. So I will see if I can forward the link to these the compendium as well as the outreach grants part. Over to you, Madhurima.
Thanks so much, Rohini. Maybe we can paste the link to the compendium in the chat box here. Maybe Pranav can help us do that. Thank you, Somdatta. Such an incredible discussion on popular science and SciComm. Okay, and we can see that you've motivated our participants here a lot through your workshop, through the live examples, and got everybody thinking about not only why they should start writing this, but what are the things to keep in mind, what are the various nuances, how to select the right venue, even just like as a journal, like you select a journal for your article, you also should be aware of the right venue for your popular science article. So, it is read by the people you really intend to reach out to. So as we draw the curtains on this enriching workshop, I find myself really inspired by the collective energy, passion, and commitment that each one of you brought to this virtual space. Such an engaged audience, I must say. So over the past 3 days, we heard from as well as engaged with experts on manuscript writing, grant writing, as well as popular science writing today. And I'm very happy that Taylor and Francis and India Bioscience joined hands to organize this. So this virtual workshop was marked by insightful discussions, shared experiences by all the speakers as well as the audience, and a genuine exchange of ideas. So I wish that each one of you can carry forward the insights gained here and apply them in your research communication. So true impact of this workshop lies not just in the knowledge that was acquired, but also in the actions taken and the positive change that initiated through these. Once again, I extend my gratitude to our esteemed speakers as well as the participants, for their invaluable contribution. We will plan another workshop for researchers, probably in the first half of 2024. So please keep an eye on that. We'll announce it on social media like we did this time around. Also, feel free to suggest topics that you want to learn about, know more about. We will share a feedback form with you right after closing this session. So kindly fill that up. It will help us understand if you found the sessions useful. I'm getting a lot of great comments from all of you, so which kind of makes me feel encouraged to maybe work on another one. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all and close this session. So you can reach out to us on social media or via email. Pranav has put in his email address as well as you would have received communication from our end. So do send us your thoughts and comments. And Somdatta, Karishma, if there are any last words, parting words that you want to share, please do so.
I have to just thank you all for putting up this workshop together, because I love taking workshops, but I've never taken a workshop of this kind of size of an audience online. So this was my first time doing it, and there were glitches, I know. And you've been also patient and really did not let those glitches take the attention away from the matter of discussion. So thank you all participants for being so lovely. And I thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you very much.
So did we. So, so with that, I would like to say thank you and bye-bye to all of you. Please to fill that form and let us know what your thoughts are, so we could work on another workshop for you next year. All right, bye-bye. Good afternoon, everyone.